Hello, welcome. So if you do not follow my other channel, I will have a video linked here, but update, I have moved for at least some time to Spain. And so I got rid of almost all of my books. I do have about 20 that are at my sister's house so that she can read them if she wants, but she's also free to get rid of them if she needs to move or anything. I did bring about 20 books with me, which was way more than makes sense for suitcases, but I wanted to reread some books and have some comfort reads here, and it just felt right. So I thought it might be interesting to people to see what books I brought with me. Most of these are favorites, but this is not like a favorites because that's just too difficult, too much pressure. I didn't own every favorite book, and I really only brought books that I was quite sure that I was going to want to reread physically this year, because of wanting to annotate them, or they're really difficult to find anywhere else, etc. So we will start with, there were a couple last minute decisions that had to be made, and so I actually ended up ditching this companion book, so this doesn't make a lot of sense anymore, but I have been mid-reread and annotation of Wide Sargasso Sea and Jane Eyre for some time now, and I actually finished reading and annotating this in preparation for reading and annotating Jane Eyre, but I ended up having to leave Jane Eyre because I just did not have space for it. So this doesn't necessarily make sense anymore, but I can still read and annotate Jane Eyre in ebook form. So this is kind of response to Jane Eyre from a Caribbean author. She is white, but Jean Rhys wrote this as kind of a voice for the character in Jane Eyre who doesn't have a voice, and I absolutely love this book. I also absolutely love Jane Eyre. I read or listen to Jane Eyre like a couple times a year, I think. Not that I think it's a perfect book by any stretch, but I do just absolutely love it, and I think that this adds so much to the story. So I am very interested in these books in conversation, and so I highly recommend this book and Jane Eyre. I think that they are wonderful, super entertaining, but also have so many layers to them. Yes. The Idiot by Elif Bachman. This is one that conceivably I could reread this and then maybe donate it if I don't want to move it with me yet again. But I absolutely love this book the first time I read it. It is so funny, so clever, so relatable, even when you are not someone who actually should be able to relate to this girl at all. This is the story of a 18-year-old in the mid-1990s who is starting at Harvard University. She is Turkish American, and she is just kind of adjusting to life at Harvard, going to her classes. She develops an obsession with this guy who is just the worst. And so, but she is, as a narrator, hilarious. This book is about everything and nothing all at once. For sure, if you are someone who doesn't like books where nothing happens, then I don't necessarily recommend this one. Even though a lot does happen, you end up in Europe, things happen, but the things that are happening are definitely not the point of the book, for sure. Then, at great cost to my luggage weight, I brought the Neapolitan novels by Elena Ferrante. I did finish the last one, The Story of the Lost Child, pretty much right before moving, and I want to reread these very soon. I read them initially quite slowly. I read them one per year for the first 3 books, and then took a year off before reading the last book, mostly just because I didn't want to finish it. But now I really want to read them all as one. I have heard that the author actually considers them like a 4-part novel rather than separate novels, and I'm very interested to experience them after each other. I do think that it was beneficial for me to read them really slowly, but now I'm interested to see how much more I get out of them when I am not forgetting things between books. So this is a very sweeping work following 2 young girls who start out as young children in the first book and end as like older middle-aged women in the last book. It is written originally in Italian, following these 2 women in Naples, in a like working class neighborhood in Naples. Another one that is about everything. It covers so much territory, politically, socially, gender, all kinds of discussions being had at all times, but very much most of the time in the background, but still very interesting. So love this series so much. Another beloved book is The Water Cure by Sophie McIntosh. I do have a video talking about this book. This is a very personally impactful book for me. I consider it the best writing about emotional and religious abuse that I have ever seen. This is marketed often as a dystopian, and I do not think that it should be. I think it should be marketed as kind of cult fiction or like brainwashing, abuse, kind of nuclear family gone wrong fiction, and I absolutely love it. I have read it several times and I want to read it again. I have started this is my first read coming here, the Poppy Trilogy by R.F. Kuang. Again, I have read this already, but I really want to reread the trilogy in its entirety and annotate, or at least tab. I read these as they came out, and I have re-listened here and there since then, but I want to read it all in one go, especially because it is such a sweeping fantasy, military fantasy saga with so many different characters and so many different political movements and everything going on that reading them as they came out, I definitely was losing characters between books. So this has been really fun. I'm reading this and listening to the audiobooks at the same time because I own all 3 audiobooks. And so I have been doing like immersive reading, and normally I really only do that in Spanish, but I have really been enjoying doing it in English. So this has been delightful so far, and I can't wait to be absolutely crushed. So this is a, like I said, military fantasy series. I am not normally into military fantasy, but this is the exception. This is following a young girl named Rin who is growing up in like warlord, feudal kind of Chinese-inspired fantasy world, and it is a combination of multiple different historical time periods in the history of China, and it is obviously fictionalized into this fantasy universe where shamans and like magical powers are real, but it is discussing the Poppy Wars, obviously, that actually took place, and the colonization of parts of China by Japan, and all kinds of different things are interwoven in here. This is a brutal series, incredibly violent and disturbing, but so worth it if that is an option for you. Okay, gonna have to relocate my camera here. Okay, moving on. Another irresponsible space and weight choice was bringing 2 copies of Babel. I just had to do it, okay? This is probably right now my favorite book. Like if I just had to pick a favorite book right now, I just love this book so much. So I did want to read it and annotate it in English. So I got this smaller paperback that is also the same size as the Poppy War paperbacks that I got. I love it, but I also own it in Spanish because I had ordered it before the great fall of the book depository. And so this is like one of my prized possessions. I paid like $40 for this, and I do want to reread it in Spanish. So, and now when I first read it, the audiobook was not out in Spanish. Now I have listened to the audiobook in Spanish, but I can also immersive read it with the Spanish audiobook and this, and I can immersive read it with the English audiobook and the English book. And so I just brought them both because I couldn't get rid of my Spanish one, but I also still want to read it and annotate it in English, so I allowed myself that luxury. Another one that I might reread and then pass along, we will see if it makes it, The Dispossessed by Ursula K. Le Guin. This is so small, I'm just going to bring it because I've been really wanting to reread this. I first read it in a reading vlog on this channel and absolutely loved it, but I know that it is definitely not for everyone because it is extremely like, you don't really care about the characters, you don't really care about the plot, it is really just about like the theory and the ideas in here, and I know that that is generally not enough to like carry a story for most people, so I'm really interested to reread it and evaluate it a little bit more clearly the second time, but high hopes that I will still really like it. Then another tiny one, I have The Employees by Olga Raven. I do really want to read her new book also, which is called My Work. This book is so fascinating. This was recommended to me by Toby at Toby's Book Corner. And I absolutely adored it. So this is a very, very experimental style of book where it's written in like employee logs or like statements taken from employees on a spaceship kind of thing, but it's not really so much actually science fiction as it is just really, that's kind of the conceit that allows you to have this conversation about like work and toxic workplaces and exploitation and how people cope with that, the mechanisms that they use in their minds, the mechanisms that companies create in order to keep employees like to doing what they need them to do. A very interesting one to read kind of in conversation with that book about social media moderators. I forget what it's called now, but I'll put it on the screen. Very interesting to read in conversation. I like this one better than that one. One that I actually couldn't get rid of because there's no other way to access this book, as far as I can tell, has not been published as an ebook. It's called On the Origin of Species and Other Stories by Bo Young Kim, or Kim Bo Young. This is a translated short story collection from Korean, and I really loved these. These are science fiction, a really, really wide variety of styles and themes, a lot about like capitalism, and I remember just being fascinated by these and loving them so much, and so I really want to reread them. So I had to keep this book because that was my only alternative to reread them. So we shall see. I did not get really into the other short story collection from this author. I think I DNF'd it just because I wasn't really feeling it, so we shall see. Then I did bring the Born trilogy by Jeff Vandermeer. There's Born, the novella The Strange Bird, and Dead Astronauts. So I gave away the Annihilation trilogy because they came out in really, really cool covers, and so I was planning to get those covers, but then with the move, I actually just got them on ebook. So I do want to reread that series before the new one comes out, which I think is November, so I should be doing that now. but I'm not. But regardless, I did end up keeping these. These two series by Jeff Vandermeer are some of my favorite series of all times, and I think that Born in particular is very underrated because I don't think the book Born is super well done. Like, at first it reads kind of like YA, and like you're not totally sure what's going on and whether any of this is worth it. And then I do think he finishes it really, really strong. And then the ideas within Born, I think he develops even better in the next two. Although Dead Astronauts is a wild ride. Like, this is one of the most experimental books that I've ever read. So it's definitely not going to be for everybody, but I just wanted to reread these and really take them in. A silly one, I partially only kept this out of nostalgia, but this is Kleiner Eisbär kommt bald wieder. This is a German, obviously, picture book that I have been attempting on and off to learn German for most of my life, and so I have very fond memories of this picture book from my childhood, and it's very cute. And so I kind of found it late in packing, and I was like, well, this can come with me. And then the only book that I brought that I have not read yet was a gift from Quinn, Coincidence on Instagram, and that is Biography of X by Catherine Lacey. I did just read Pew in a reading vlog pretty recently, and I am greatly looking forward to this. This is much, much longer, and so I'm very interested to see how her style develops over a longer work, what this is like for sure. So very excited about that. Thank you very much. And so that's it. Those are the books that I brought. I did also, so I brought my e-reader. I brought my Kobo. I did sell my Onyx Books e-reader for anyone who's curious. I just didn't need to bring two with me, and I needed the, money more than I needed the other e-reader. So I do have my iPad, which I can use for similar functions, and I just am left with the Kobo. So if anyone was curious, that is where we are at. We will see how many of them survive to the next move. I am hoping to actually reread all of these. I think it will be comforting as I'm in this new place to reread some of the books that I have been obsessed with for ages. So yeah, if you have any thoughts about what books you would take across the country, the world, whatever, if you have moved, you can let me know what you did with all of your books. Was this a crazy amount of books to bring in? I did one large checked bag and a carry-on and a backpack. This proportion of books was definitely way higher than it should have been for the weight, but I just paid my overweight bag fee and called it a day. Let me know how you all have been doing, and I will see you in the next video.